The night was heavy with silence, yet inside the school gym storage room chaos reigned. Emily stood there, her eyes dark, her lips curled into a cold smile as she yanked herself free from Vivian's grasp. "You are pathetic," Emily hissed. Vivian's face twisted with rage. "What did you just say to me?" She swung her hand to slap, but Emily was faster. In one fluid motion, Emily grabbed her hair and slammed her head against the iron. Weight stacked beside them. Blood oozed down Vivian's forehead, and the girl who had always lived in the mirror's adoration screamed in horror at the sight of her own disfigurement. Emily held Vivian's hair tightly, forcing her to look up. Her voice dropped, sharp and venomous, whispering into Vivian's ear like the hiss of hell itself. "From now on, you will know what it means to be truly ruined. I will make sure you can't live, and you can't die. You will watch everyone you care about destroyed right before your eyes." Her words hung like a curse in the room. Vivian's screams echoed through the walls, but they were drowned by the weight of Emily's promise. Moments later, chaos erupted outside. Teachers, students, and Vivian's mother Margaret rushed in, finding Vivian bloodied and trembling. Margaret's fury was volcanic. She wrapped her arms around her daughter, then spun on the principal. "If you do not expel this monster right now, I swear this school will regret it," she screamed. Emily stood silently, her face blank, her arms hanging at her sides. But her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. She dialed a single number. "Mr. Harrison," she whispered when the line clicked, her voice trembling just enough to sound pitiful. "Could you please come to the school? They want to expel me." The atmosphere in the principal's office became suffocating. Margaret demanded blood. The faculty cowered beneath her threats, and Emily, pale and fragile, kept her head bowed. Finally, the principal's gavel came down. "Emily, your behavior has repeatedly harmed the school's reputation. I hereby expel you." The doors swung open. "You will do no such thing." A tall, imposing man entered Mr. Harrison. His voice cut like steel. Margaret lunged toward him, shrieking, but he shoved her aside without a glance. "Emily will not be expelled." The room froze. Vivian burst into tears, grabbing her father's sleeve. "Dad, how can you protect her? I am your daughter." But Mr. Harrison's eyes were ice. He yanked his arm away. "This is not the time." Emily's shoulders trembled as she dabbed at her tears. "I did not want to trouble you, sir. I only want to keep studying. Vivian always bullies me, but I never thought it would come to this." Vivian's shrill voice cut her off. "She is lying. She dragged me in there. The door burst open again. This time, police entered, dragging in a scarred man, one of the hired thugs. His voice carried the weight of truth. "It was her," he pointed straight at Vivian. "She told us to hurt Emily. To film it." The air collapsed into silence. Emily broke into sobs, collapsing to her knees. Mr. Harrison immediately knelt, cradling her as though she were porcelain. Vivian's protests shriveled into nothing against the tide of evidence. Teachers avoided her gaze. Margaret stood frozen, her painted face cracking with disbelief. For everyone else, the scene was over. But for Emily, it was just the beginning. Days passed, but the whispers in the hallways did not fade. Vivian's once untouchable status was shattered. Students looked at her with a mixture of fear and pity. Emily, meanwhile, remained a quiet shadow, until the day she slipped an envelope into Vivian's locker. Inside was a USB drive. On it, a video played, Vivian, screaming, blood dripping down her face, her desperate voice shrieking insults. But the way the footage was cut made it look as though Vivian had attacked Emily first. A note accompanied the USB. "1 copy for you. 20 more if you test me." Vivian's hands shook as she read the words. She knew instantly Emily was not bluffing. That night, Vivian lay awake in bed. Margaret paced the room like a lioness in a cage, furious but helpless. "She is destroying you," Margaret hissed. "We need to bury her." Vivian's phone buzzed. Another message from Emily. "You think you know your father? Think again. Check the drawer in his study. Bottom 1, left side." Vivian, her curiosity sharper than her fear, crept into her father's office that night. With trembling hands, she unlocked the drawer. Inside, neatly folded documents. Her eyes scanned the medical records, DNA reports. Her name, her blood, her mother's. But the report screamed the truth she could not bear. 0% relation to her father. The world tilted. Vivian dropped the papers, her mind spinning. Margaret rushed to her side, snatching the documents. For a moment, Margaret's mask slipped, her face pale with something close to horror. "You do not need to see this," Margaret snapped, shoving the papers into the fireplace. Flames devoured the truth, but it was too late. Vivian's eyes were wild. Emily had seen it all from the shadows, through the reflection of glass. The cracks had begun to spread. The next morning at school, Vivian confronted Emily in a deserted hallway. Her face was pale, her mascara smeared, her voice trembling with both hatred and desperation. "What do you want from me?" Emily leaned against the wall, calm, her eyes glinting with quiet triumph. "I want you to remember that you are not untouchable. You are not even who you think you are. Vivian lunged forward, grabbing Emily's collar. "Shut up!" But Emily only smiled, her voice a low whisper, every word dripping into Vivian's ear like poison. "Tell me, Vivian, how does it feel to realize you have been living a lie, that everything you thought made you special, your family, your father's love, is nothing but an illusion?" Vivian's grip faltered. Her hands shook. Emily gently brushed them away, almost tenderly, before stepping past her. The echo of Emily's footsteps lingered long after she was gone, and with it, the certainty that Vivian's world had only just begun to unravel. Vivian stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, the flames of the fireplace flashed before her, swallowing the papers, the truth. Her father's gentle smile, the one she once took for granted, now felt like a cruel mask. Margaret, meanwhile, was unraveling in her own way. She stormed through the house, her wine glass never empty, her voice sharp and bitter. "That girl is a parasite," she raged. "First she ruins your reputation, now she toys with our family. She wants everything we have, Vivian." Vivian clutched her knees on the couch, her hair tangled, her nails biting into her palms. "She knows things, Mother. Things she should not know." Margaret froze, staring at her daughter with a flicker of fear. She did not answer. Vivian's phone buzzed again. "Emily, a single message. You should talk to your mother. Ask her why she lied." Vivian turned her head slowly toward Margaret, her expression hollow. "Is it true? Did you lie to me?" Margaret's glass shattered on the floor. "Don't listen to her, she is twisting everything." But Vivian's mind was already breaking apart, piece by piece. Her chest heaved, her breathing ragged. She screamed, the sound raw and animalistic, and swept everything off the coffee table in a violent crash. Margaret grabbed her shoulders, trying to hold her still, but Vivian shoved her away, eyes blazing with fury and despair. You let me live like this, pretending. Who am I? Who am I, Mother?" Margaret slapped her. The sound cracked through the room. For a moment silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Both women froze, one trembling, the other horrified by what she had just done. From outside the house, across the street, Emily watched through the window. She saw the slaps. She saw Vivian collapse to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, and Margaret sinking into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile. The next day at school, Vivian staggered through the halls like a ghost. Her hair unkempt, her shirt untucked, eyes red and unfocused. Whispers followed her every step. Emily approached, silent as ever, sliding a folded note into Vivian's trembling hand. Vivian opened it, and her heart stopped. "You do not belong in their world. But you could belong in mine." It was not a threat. It was an invitation. And that, somehow, terrified Vivian even more. Margaret sat in her private study with the curtains drawn tight, a half-empty bottle of wine trembling in her hand. Her reflection in the glass cabinet looked older, broken, almost unrecognizable. For years she had curated an image of power, sharp dresses, sharper words, but now she felt like a child backed into a corner. Her phone lit up. A message. From an unknown number. "You were never enough for him. And Vivian knows it now." Margaret's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to throw the phone, to scream, to deny it. But the words cut too close to the bone. Memories flashed. Andrew's distant eyes. The fire. The questions she could never answer. Her grip on the bottle slipped. Wine spilled across her papers like blood spreading on white cloth. And then another message arrived. "I can help you make it stop. But you will have to trust me." Margaret stared at the glowing screen until her vision blurred. Emily. It had to be Emily. The girl had wormed her way into every crack of their lives, finding weaknesses no one else could see. When Vivian stumbled into the study, eyes wild and hair tangled, Margaret rushed to hide the phone. But her daughter saw enough. Was that her? Vivian's voice was low, hoarse. "She is everywhere, Mother. Watching. Waiting." Margaret tried to steady her voice, but it shook. "Vivian, listen to me. She is dangerous. She wants to destroy us." Vivian laughed, a broken, jagged sound. "No, Mother. She does not just want to destroy us. She wants to replace us." Margaret's stomach dropped. Replace. The word echoed in her skull like a curse. That night, Margaret dreamed of flames. The fire roared through the old house again, but this time, Emily stood in the doorway, untouched, smiling. Andrew was beside her, and Vivian was nowhere to be seen. She woke screaming. Down the hall, Vivian was already awake, curled in the corner of her room, whispering to herself. Emily's note was clutched in her hand like scripture. The house was no longer a home. It was a cage, and Emily held the key. The next morning, Andrew returned home after another night of meetings. But the air in the house was poisoned. Margaret greeted him with forced composure, her makeup smeared from the night before, while Vivian hovered silently at the staircase, her eyes hollow, watchful. Andrew frowned. What happened here? No one answered. Margaret forced a brittle smile. Nothing. Just A bad night. But Vivian's sudden laugh cut through the silence. Nothing, Mother screamed until dawn. She thinks Emily is haunting her. Andrew stiffened at the name. Emily. Always Emily. He glanced at Margaret, whose lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. You need rest, he said quietly, both of you. But even as he spoke, Andrew noticed something unsettling. Vivian was not addressing him. She was staring past him, eyes fixed on the shadows, as if Emily stood right there in the hallway. By noon, Margaret could no longer bear the tension. She left the house, desperate for air, desperate to remind herself of who she once was. But as she walked down the busy Manhattan street, her phone buzzed again. He does not believe you. He never will. But I do. The message was unsigned, yet Margaret felt Emily's presence in every syllable. She stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, hands shaking. Pedestrians rushed around her, annoyed. But Margaret did not care. Her chest tightened. Emily was no longer a girl. She was an idea, a force pressing in on all sides. Margaret typed back before she could stop herself. What do you want from me? The reply came instantly. I want what you had. The family. The life. The love. And I will take it, Margaret, whether you give it or not. Margaret staggered back against a lamppost, the world spinning. People stared, but she saw none of them. Her breath hitched. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Back at the house, Vivian sat cross-legged on her bed, the curtains drawn. In her lap lay a small box. Emily had once given her a box Vivian had hidden from her mother. Inside was a silver bracelet, plain, delicate, but inscribed with a single word on the inner band. Forever. Vivian slipped it onto her wrist, her lips curling into a soft, dreamy smile. Forever, she whispered, clutching the bracelet tight. In that moment, it was clear, Emily did not need to break the family by force. She was already inside, entwining herself into every fragile thought, every weakness, every secret. The grip was tightening. And soon, someone would break. That evening, Andrew hosted a dinner for a few business partners at the house. He wanted to prove everything was under control, his family, his image, his life. Margaret dressed elegantly, hiding her exhaustion behind layers of pearls and silk. Vivian came down in her school uniform, hair unbrushed, her expression distant. The atmosphere was stiff but manageable until the wine was poured. One of Andrew's partners, an older man with sharp eyes, raised a glass and remarked casually, I heard rumors about your daughter, Andrew. Something about police questioning. Andrew's hand froze on his fork. Margaret's smile cracked. Vivian's face paled, then darkened. It is nothing, Andrew replied, voice low, clipped. Just nonsense. Misunderstandings. But Vivian slammed her glass down so hard it shattered. Red wine splashed across the tablecloth like blood. It was not a misunderstanding, she screamed, eyes wild. She is here. She is always here. Emily's with me. She never left. The room fell silent. The partners exchanged alarmed glances. Margaret tried to grab Vivian's hand, but the girl yanked it away, trembling. Andrew hissed through clenched teeth. Vivian, enough. But Vivian's gaze darted around the room, searching the shadows. She said she would take everything from us. She said it, and none of you believe me. Margaret's face drained of color. Andrew's reputation, his carefully constructed empire, was unraveling at his own dinner table. Then, as if on cue, Vivian pulled up her sleeve. The silver bracelet glimmered under the chandelier. She held it high, her voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. Emily gave me this. Emily's mine. She promised me forever. Gasps filled the room. One of the partners muttered, Emily, isn't that the girl who... He stopped, awkward, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Andrew's jaw tightened. He rose abruptly, forcing a smile at his guests. Excuse us. My daughter is not feeling well. He gripped Vivian's arm and dragged her toward the stairs. Margaret stumbling behind them, her own hands shaking. Upstairs, the argument exploded. Andrew shoved the door shut and turned on Vivian. Do you have any idea what you have done? Do you understand what is at stake? Vivian's eyes blazed. I do not care about your business, your partners, your money. Emily's the only one who sees me. Margaret clutched her chest, breath ragged. Vivian, please. But the girl spun toward her mother, her voice sharp as glass. You hate her, do not you? You hate Emily because she is better than you. The words struck like knives. Margaret's lips trembled, her body swaying as though struck by an invisible hand. And then her phone buzzed on the dresser. A new message lit up the screen. They will never believe you, Margaret. But I will. It is time. Margaret's knees buckled. She pressed a hand to her temple, whispering, Oh God, she is real. Andrew stood frozen, staring at his broken wife, his hysterical daughter, and the glowing phone screen that pulsed like a curse. For the first time, he felt that Emily was not just a memory. She was here, threading herself deeper into his family's veins, and she had just detonated the first bomb. That night, silence in the mansion was louder than any scream. Andrew stayed in his office, lights dimmed, staring at contracts he could no longer read. Down the hall, Margaret locked herself in the bathroom, whispering to the mirror as though speaking to someone who was not there. Vivian curled on her bed, clutching the bracelet, murmuring Emily's name like a prayer. Margaret pressed her palms flat against the mirror. "You won't take her from me," she whispered hoarsely. "She is my daughter. Mine." But the reflection in the glass seemed wrong. Her eyes too wide, her lips curving into a smile she did not recognize. Her phone buzzed again. "No one believes you." "But I do. Only I understand," Margaret gasped, clutching the sink. The next message followed before she could breathe. "You have suffered too long. You know Andrew does not protect you. Vivian does not need him. She needs us. Let me in, Margaret. Let me help." Her chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths. Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to throw the phone into the tub, to scream, to resist, but the words, "Let me in," echoed in her skull like a lullaby. Downstairs, Andrew poured himself another glass of whiskey. He could still hear the shattered wineglass from dinner, still see the horrified faces of his partners. His empire was cracking. Not from hostile takeovers, not from economic collapse, but from inside his own home. He rubbed his temple, muttering, "It is just stress. They are both unstable. It is not real." But as he lifted the glass, the chandelier above the dining table flickered once, then twice, before going out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Andrew froze, glassed halfway to his lips. Then faintly, from the staircase he heard it. A girl's laughter. High, soft, unmistakable. His hand trembled, whiskey sloshing onto the floor. He spun toward the sound, but the stairs were empty. Still, the laughter lingered, echoing in his mind, long after it should have faded. "Upstairs," Vivian whispered to the bracelet. "I told you he would hear you." And Margaret, still clutching her phone, whispered back to the silence, "Yes, Emily. I will let you in." The family had passed a threshold. Emily was no longer just an absence. She was a presence. And soon, she would own them all. Margaret did not sleep that night. She lay in bed with the phone clutched to her chest, waiting hoping for another message. When it finally came, just before dawn, her entire body shivered. "You have been silenced too long. He dismisses you. He laughs at you. But I see the truth. Don't you want to be heard, Margaret?" She typed back with trembling fingers. "Yes. I am so tired of being ignored." The reply was instant, as if Emily had been waiting, watching. "Then you must act. Take back control. I will guide you." Downstairs, Andrew had fallen asleep at his desk, whiskey bottle empty. Papers sprawled across the mahogany surface, contracts, financial reports, legal warnings. His empire was bleeding. Margaret crept down the staircase barefoot, drawn by a pull stronger than thought. In her hand she held the heavy crystal ashtray Andrew always kept by his chair. Her mind flickered between terror and resolve, between her own voice and Emily's whisper. "He does not protect you. He never has. He left you to rot while he rebuilt his empire. He let Vivian suffer. He let me die." Margaret's knuckles whitened around the ashtray. She stood behind Andrew's chair, watching his chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. She could end years of belittlement, loneliness, betrayal. But then Andrew stirred. His eyes fluttered open, catching her silhouette in the doorway. "Margaret." His voice was groggy, raw. What are you doing?" Her heart slammed against her ribs. For a second, her vision blurred, and she saw not Andrew but a shadow of Emily, smiling, urging her forward. But she dropped the ashtray with a dull thud on the carpet. "Nothing," she whispered hoarsely. "I could not sleep." Andrew frowned, rubbing his eyes, but said nothing. He was too exhausted, too broken to question further. He turned back to his desk. Margaret retreated upstairs, her hands shaking violently. She collapsed against the bathroom door, sobbing silently. The phone buzzed once more. Weak. "But do not worry, Margaret. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow you will be stronger. Tomorrow you will do what is necessary." Margaret wept harder, whispering to herself, "I did not mean to. I was not going to." But deep down, she knew Emily was right. Tonight had been a rehearsal. Tomorrow she would not falter. Vivian, awake in her room, pressed the bracelet to her lips and smiled faintly. She had heard everything, the thud of the ashtray, the whispered exchanges, and in the silence of the mansion, Emily's presence thickened, weaving invisible strings tighter around each of them. The game had shifted. Emily was no longer merely haunting, she was commanding, and Margaret had taken her first step into obedience. 2 days later, the Anderson estate hosted a charity gala. It was Andrew's desperate attempt to restore his public image, to assure investors and partners that the Anderson empire was stable. The mansion glittered with chandeliers and fine wine, guests draped in tuxedos and silk gowns. Cameras flashed at every arrival. Andrew rehearsed his speech again and again, his tone sharp, calculated. "Stability," he whispered under his breath. "Confidence. Control." But upstairs, Margaret stood before the mirror, her makeup perfect, yet her eyes hollow. Emily's voice coiled around her like smoke. They will all be watching. Do you want them to see the truth? Do you want them to finally hear you? Margaret's pulse quickened. She imagined the crowd downstairs, the powerful men and women who had whispered behind her back for years. To them, she was the fragile wife, the background figure, the woman to be pitied. Tonight, Emily whispered, you will be more than a shadow. When Andrew took the stage, the room hushed. He spoke of resilience, of rebuilding, of trust. Applause rippled through the hall. For a moment, he believed the cracks in his empire were invisible. Then Margaret walked in. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble, drawing every eye. She was not supposed to be here. Andrew had begged her to stay upstairs, fearing her instability. But here she was. Her emerald dress glimmering under the lights, her hands trembling just enough for the cameras to notice. Margaret? Andrew hissed under his breath as she approached the stage. Go back. She ignored him. Taking the microphone from his hand, she turned to the audience. Her smile was wide, brittle. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice steady in a way Andrew had not heard in months. My husband speaks of stability, of control, but perhaps you should know what stability looks like in this house. Gasps spread through the room. Andrew reached for the microphone, but she jerked it away. Her eyes flicked upward, as if someone invisible stood beside her. And then she spoke words that were not entirely hers. He locked away his grief. He replaced a daughter, as if a child could be swapped like stocks. He let his wife rot in silence. He let her die. But do not worry, Emily is still here. The room froze. Guests stared in disbelief, some whispering, others pulling out their phones. Andrew's face drained of color. Margaret laughed high, sharp, cracking at the edges. Yes, she said louder, her voice carrying through the hall. Emily is here. She sees everything. She will not be silenced again. Security moved forward, but cameras were already flashing wildly, capturing every word, every expression. By the time Andrew wrestled the microphone away, the damage was irreversible. The next morning, headlines screamed, Anderson Gala turns chaotic wife's breakdown exposes dark family secrets. Andrew's empire quaked. Investors called, journalists swarmed the gates, whispers of madness and ghosts danced through the media. And upstairs, Margaret sat calmly in the dark, her phone glowing faintly in her lap. You were magnificent, Emily whispered. Now they will finally listen. Now the world knows. Margaret smiled through her tears. For the first time in years she felt powerful. But downstairs, Andrew poured another glass of whiskey, trembling. For the first time, he truly believed Emily was not gone. She was winning. The fallout from the gala was relentless. Investors pulled out. Business partners distanced themselves. Reporters camped outside the gates of the Anderson estate, shouting questions that sliced through the cold morning air. Andrew tried to regain control, barking orders into phones, threatening lawsuits. But his voice cracked with desperation. His empire was crumbling, and for the first time, he could not hide it. Inside the mansion, silence reigned. Margaret barely left her room, though her image, wild eyes, trembling smile was plastered across every newspaper. She sat by the window, clutching her phone, waiting for Emily's next words. They doubt you now, Emily whispered, soft and sweet. But soon, they will fear you. Margaret shivered. Fear and exhilaration tangled within her. For years, she had been invisible, erased by Andrew's ambition. Now she was everywhere. Down the hall, Vivian listened. She was careful, pretending to be the obedient daughter, but inside she seethed. Margaret had spoken Emily's name before the world. That was supposed to be her connection, her secret bond. Emily belongs to me, Vivian whispered in the dark. Not her. But Emily's laughter rippled faintly, like wind through broken glass. You will have your time, little one. Patience. Andrew grew paranoid. He ordered new security, new locks, new routines. Yet every night he woke drenched in sweat, hearing whispers in the corners of the room. Sometimes he thought he smelled smoke, faint and acrid, the ghost of the fire that had taken his first family. One evening, he stormed into Margaret's room, clutching a bottle of scotch. Enough of this, he snapped, his voice hoarse. You embarrassed me. You humiliated this family. Whatever madness you are indulging, it ends now. Margaret turned to him slowly, her face pale, her eyes shining. It is not madness, Andrew. It is justice. She is here, and she won't leave you alone, not until you pay. Andrew froze. For a heartbeat, he swore he saw a figure behind her, a girl, faint, flickering like a dying flame. He blinked, and she was gone. His hands trembled so badly he nearly dropped the bottle. You need help, he muttered, but the conviction in his voice was gone. Margaret leaned closer, her lips curling into a smile that was not entirely hers. No, Andrew. That night, Andrew locked himself in his study, pacing, muttering, drinking, until dawn. Vivian heard the sounds her father unraveling. Margaret, too, lay awake, whispering to her phone, and Emily, unseen, listened to all of it, her presence thickening like fog in every corner of the house. The Anderson estate had become a prison, every room saturated with distrust. Andrew suspected Margaret. Margaret clung to Emily. Vivian grew jealous, desperate for attention, and Emily fed on it all. "They are breaking," she whispered, "and when they shatter, you will rise." The pressure inside the mansion had reached its boiling point. Days bled into nights, each one heavier, darker. Reporters still circled outside, their camera flashes stabbing through the iron gates like lightning. Inside, paranoia reigned. Margaret no longer recognized herself in the mirror. Her hair was tangled, her eyes sunken, her skin pale like parchment. Yet when she looked into her reflection, she did not see only herself. Sometimes she saw Emily's shadow smiling faintly, lips whispering words Margaret could not quite hear but understood all the same. Andrew tried to bury himself in work, but every deal collapsed, every call ended in silence. His empire was dead, though he had not admitted it out loud. He blamed Margaret. He blamed Vivian. Sometimes, when drunk enough, he even muttered that Emily's ghost had cursed him. One night, the storm outside battered the mansion with rain and wind. Margaret stood in the hallway, her phone glowing in her hand. A new message had arrived. "Tonight, you will prove your devotion." Her heart thudded violently. "Prove!" The reply came instantly. "Burn it down. Free yourself from his chains. Fire took me, it can take him too." Margaret staggered back, her breath catching. Her mind screamed no, but Emily's words wove into her like threads of fire. She thought of Andrew's sneer, his cruelty, his neglect. She thought of the world mocking her after the gala. And suddenly, the idea no longer horrified her. It felt inevitable. She crept into the kitchen, hands trembling, searching through drawers, until she found the lighter Andrew used for cigars. She turned it over in her palm, the small metal weight both terrifying and comforting. Vivian appeared at the doorway, watching silently. "Mother," she whispered. Margaret whirled, eyes wide, the lighter clutched tight. "Vivian, go back to bed." But Vivian's gaze dropped to the lighter, then back to her mother's trembling hands. Her lips curved into a faint smile. She did not scream. She did not try to stop her. Because deep down, Vivian wanted to see what Emily would do next. Rain lashed the windows, thunder cracked above, and the first flicker of flame danced in Margaret's imagination. She had not struck the lighter yet, but in her mind, the house was already burning, Andrew's empire crumbling into ash. Emily's voice was so close now, it was as if she were standing beside her. "Do it, Margaret. End it all. Then you will finally be free." Margaret's thumb pressed against the flint wheel. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Vivian's smile widened. Upstairs, Andrew stirred in his study, unaware that his world was seconds from fire. And for the first time, Margaret felt not fear but power. The storm outside screamed against the glass. But inside the mansion, it was Margaret's shaking breath that filled the silence. The lighter trembled in her hand, the small metal click echoing like a gunshot when she pressed the wheel. A spark flared tiny, fragile. Yet in her mind, it was already an unstoppable blaze. Vivian stood in the doorway, her eyes glowing in the dim kitchen light. She did not move, did not speak. She only watched, lips parted, as if savoring the moment. This was not fear. This was curiosity, hunger. Upstairs, Andrew slammed his study door open, shouting into the storm. "Margaret, what the hell are you doing down there?" His voice was ragged, half drunk, vibrating with fury. Margaret froze, the flame dancing inches from a curtain. Emily's voice wrapped around her like silk and steel at once. "Now. Let him see, let him know what it feels like to lose everything." Tears welled in Margaret's eyes as her hand jerked forward, pressing the flame to the fabric. For a moment nothing happened, then the curtain ignited with a violent whoosh, fire racing upward like a living thing starving for air. Andrew appeared at the stairwell, his face pale in the glow of the spreading fire. "My God. Margaret, what have you done?" She turned toward him, her face bathed in orange light, a terrible serenity in her expression. "I set us free." Smoke curled through the halls. The alarms shrieked. Vivian clutched the banister, her expression unreadable, half terror, half awe. She whispered under her breath, as though to Emily herself. "You did it." Andrew lunged toward the flames with nothing but his bare hands, cursing, trying to beat the fire back. But the fire roared louder, consuming wood and velvet, eating the house alive. Margaret only stood still, swaying slightly, as if mesmerized by the destruction. In her ear, Emily whispered, "Beautiful." "Now he finally understands." Andrew coughed, choking on smoke, his voice breaking. "We have to get out, Vivian, run." But Vivian did not run. She stepped closer to her mother, taking her hand. And in that instant she felt it, the strange heat, the invisible tether. Emily was there, between them, within them, laughing softly as the mansion burned. Flames climbed the walls, glass shattered, and with every crash the Anderson family fractured further. This was no longer just a fire. This was Emily's ascension. The fire screamed through the mansion, devouring walls, swallowing chandeliers, cracking portraits as if tearing apart history itself. The storm outside raged, but inside, the inferno was louder, angrier, alive. Andrew stumbled through the smoke, coughing violently, his once commanding figure reduced to a desperate, flailing man, his empire, his pride, his fortress all dissolving into ash around him. Margaret. Vivian. We have to leave now. His voice was raw, breaking under fear. Margaret did not move. She stood in the center of the hall, her nightgown glowing with the reflection of fire, her face calm, eerily calm. Vivian clung to her hand, but her eyes were fixed on the flames, not on her father. Because in that fire, she saw something Andrew could not, Emily. The girl's shadow flickered in every flame, dancing between bursts of smoke. Her outline was fragile, childlike, yet her presence pressed down with terrible weight. She whispered through the crackle of burning wood, her voice weaving into their minds. You never cared for her. You only cared for yourselves. Now you will burn in the house you built on lies. Andrew's knees buckled. He saw her too. At first he thought it was the smoke, hallucinations born of carbon and fear. But no. The eyes staring at him from the fire were real, piercing, cruel. He screamed, stumbling backward. But there was nowhere to run. Emily. Margaret's lips trembled as she whispered the name, half in reverence, half in surrender. Vivian's grip on her mother's hand tightened. She leaned closer to the flames, eyes glistening. She is here with us. Can't you see it, Father? The inferno howled. The mansion shook. A chandelier, massive and golden, tore loose from the ceiling, crashing between them, sparks erupting like a volcano. Andrew barely leapt back in time, his face cut by flying glass. But Margaret and Vivian did not flinch. They only watched. This is my gift to you, Emily's voice purred through the smoke. A choice. Leave together and burn forever in guilt. Or stay, and let me finish what I started. Andrew's eyes widened. He understood too late that this was not just madness. It was judgment. Emily was not only haunting them, she was holding them prisoner inside their own ruin, turning escape into a game only she controlled. He reached out toward Margaret, desperation breaking him. Please, come with me, we can still get out. Margaret, Vivian, please. But Margaret turned her head slowly, her eyes glowing with reflected fire. For the first time she smiled not as a wife, not as a mother, but as something untethered. And Vivian whispered the words that sealed their fate. Emily decides. The mansion was no longer a home. It was a cathedral of fire, its ceilings collapsing in waves of thunder, its walls groaning like dying beasts. Smoke clawed down their throats, and every breath felt like swallowing knives. Andrew dragged himself through the haze, his hands bleeding as he crawled over burning beams, his voice cracked against the roar of fire. Margaret, Vivian, please, for God's sake, move! But they stood together, silhouettes against the inferno, Margaret holding Vivian's hand tightly, both facing the flames as if awaiting judgment. Their bodies trembled, yet their expressions were not entirely human anymore. Because Emily was there, she shimmered in the firelight, sometimes a shadow, sometimes a girl, her dark hair whipping like smoke. Her eyes glowed with an impossible mix of sorrow and triumph. She was no longer just a ghost. She was the fire itself, the voice of vengeance alive in every crackle, every collapse. He never loved you, Emily whispered into Margaret's ear. Not you, not Vivian. Only his empire, only his pride. Why should he be saved? Margaret's lips trembled. Her memories clawed at her. Years of silence, years of being invisible, years of betrayal. She squeezed Vivian's hand harder. Tears streaked her soot-stained cheeks. Andrew staggered closer, nearly blinded by heat, his suit scorched. Don't listen. Please, Margaret, do not let her take you. Don't let her take our daughter. Emily's laughter rang through the inferno, chilling even within the flames. Yours? She was never yours. She was always mine. Vivian turned, her face lit orange and gold. For a heartbeat, Andrew thought he saw his little girl again, innocent, afraid, pleading for safety. But when she spoke, her voice was laced with Emily's cadence. Father, you lost us long ago. The roof groaned above them, fire chewing through the beams. Sparks rained down like stars falling from a merciless sky. Andrew dropped to his knees, coughing blood, the heat blistering his skin. His last strength broke into a cry, not of a CEO, not of a powerful man, but of a father stripped bare. I am sorry. Emily, I am sorry. Please, forgive me. For the first time, silence fell. The flames seemed to pause, holding their breath. Emily tilted her head, her outline flickering in the blaze. Forgiveness, the word tasted foreign on her tongue. Margaret closed her eyes, clutching Vivian as though bracing for impact. Vivian stared into the fire, her body trembling, her soul torn between her father's plea and Emily's grip. And then, the mansion roof gave way. A roar of flames swallowed their cries, burying them in a sea of fire and ash. When the storm finally calmed, and firefighters poured through the ruins, Nothing of the Anderson mansion remained but charred stone and smoking embers. Among the wreckage, no bodies were ever recovered. Only a single photograph burned at the edges remained intact. It showed Margaret, Vivian, and a girl whose face was blurred beyond recognition. Locals whispered afterward that the mansion was cursed. That on stormy nights you could still hear a girl's laughter echoing in the ruins. A laughter both sorrowful and triumphant. As if she had won the final game. Emily had become more than a ghost. She had become a legacy,